Earlier I saw a clip from Jordan Peterson on with Piers Morgan talking about Russia. Now, I have no issue with Jordan Peterson. As a matter of fact, I will lavish the man with praise. He seems to be one of the few people that have any semblance of sanity when it comes to the examination of the potentially catastrophic affair over in Eastern Europe. However, the line of "we sold our soul for his oil and gas," sorry if I'm operating under the auspice of trade among nations, was a good thing. Russia gets funds for their energy, and Europe gets a cheap, reliable supply of energy. If goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. This has been going on for years, and no one said a damn word. Meanwhile, a retaliatory reaction to the arrogance of America's military aggression via NATO was foreshadowed by America's own freaking prior statesman. Repeated expansion of NATO was met with Russian warnings that the West arrogantly ignored with a giant middle finger, much to the endangerment of Eastern Europe, which the Americans evidently cared nothing for, as it encouraged all of the Western powers to dump an ungodly amount of money into arguably the most corrupt country in all of Europe. A country that no one gave a fuck about until Russia mobilized its forces in the face of a potential NATO membership dangling over its head. A country that offers no strategic value except seemingly to bleed Europe dry as a measure to flex its virtue. I have a question. Why are we being taught to hate Russia, and why now? Because I don't buy Peterson's selling our soul for his oil and gas argument for one damn moment. Can we apply that same standard to any other nation, I wonder? Can we call bullshit on the Americans who sold their souls in the 70s to protect the Saudi regime in exchange for the creation of the petrodollar? Can we call bullshit on the Americans who, under the guise of freedom and democracy, knocked out Gaddafi and Hussein because they dared to sell oil outside of that petrodollar and leave the nations in turmoil and ruin? Cheap talk of freedom and democracy is met with the gutting of domestic energy production to protect the planet, while Biden goes begging on hands and knees, cup in hand like the pathetic peasant he is to the world's most authoritarian regimes for his own suicidal malice. Can we call bullshit on America's hard pro-leftist domestic agenda? Meanwhile, they will do anything to appease the Saudis and walk on eggshells to not offend the Chinese market. Speaking of China, can we say then that the entire world has sold its soul to China as the Western world decimates its own manufacturing capacity, making China the world's hub for the creation of cheap goods for the Western markets as they continuously ramp up further coal-burning production? Do you think the same faux outcry will eclipse Ukraine as the Sims update their Twitter bios, exchanging their flag for the Taiwanese one in the event China decides to mobilize their forces against the island? Do you think anyone in the West will say this was the inevitable consequence of making China rich via the comments of the previously mentioned paragraph? I seem to recall it was racist to mention the origins of a certain virus that was unleashed upon the entire globe that destroyed the world's economy. Funny, it was racism when Big Pharma was making many billionaires hands over fist, but when potentially economic interest is suddenly a factor, now it demands solidarity or more of our fucking taxes. I am sick to death of the endless hordes kissing Trump's ass for the supposed brilliance of warning Europe not to get too cozy on Russia's energy exports. And I like Trump, but I'm curious if that same attitude applies to the people who would also get cozy on America's exports as well. Spare me the nonsense, will you? This is not Trump's brilliance. Germany hosts the most American troops on foreign soil next to Japan, and it's highly probable due to this occupational force that they decided to shotgun Uncle Sam's cock instead of flipping the Americans the bird and telling them to go to hell. Not buying Russia's energy while gutting domestic energy production of its own during an economic crisis is straight up freaking suicide. A decision no doubt brought upon by certain bald-headed German bastard. But of course I'm a Putin stooge for not bowing my head in complicity in the face of overwhelming hypocrisy from a fair-weather bunch of ignorant moralists. All of you two-faced bunch of nimbius can fuck off.